Let me start with the story of the giraffe and the elephant. The giraffe is a very good architect. He has built a wonderful house for himself and his family. The house has high ceilings, high windows, and narrow hallways. One day, when he was working in his wood shop in his basement, he saw his new friend, the elephant, passing by. And he thought, oh, I'd like to invite the elephant over. So he did. And the elephant very happily accepted because he's also a good architect, so they can work together. But when the elephant was trying to enter into the door, he got stuck because the door was too narrow. And so they had to take down some panels and finally squeeze the elephant in. And then the elephant is faced with a whole new slew of problems, and his trunk accidentally knocked over furniture, and when he was walking, he broke the staircase. So the giraffe saw this, and he said, well, looks like you need to take some aerobic classes down the road and lose some weight and just slim down a little bit. And you can also take some ballet classes also to get lighter on your feet. The elephant said quietly, I'm not sure I'm the problem. I think the house is just not built for someone like me. So the story was originally told by Dr. Roosevelt Thomas Jr. The story does a really nice job in terms of helping us to see intuitively how a house built for the giraffe wouldn't work for the elephant. The giraffe actually has a choice here. The giraffe can say, it's my house. I'm not going to change a thing. Then he can only invite other giraffes to come and work with him and miss out on the talent of the elephant and other animals. Or he can say, I'm an architect. Let me look into it and see whether there are some modifications I can make in the basement so the elephant can come in and other animals can come in, and maybe we can co-create something more innovative and more inclusive. I'm certainly more leaning toward the latter choice because I'm very passionate about helping to create more inclusive and innovative workplaces. I'm very curious about how can we make that happen. So my research focuses on the behaviors and practices that actually give people the experience of inclusion. Together with my collaborators, we have conducted a lot of interviews with award-winning inclusive leaders. They come from different industries, different professions. They range from first-line supervisors, team leaders, all the way to CEOs and executives. We ask them, what are your best practices? We also have conducted focus groups with people who have worked with inclusive and non-inclusive leaders for their perspectives. From all this research, a key idea that we have generated is that the key ingredient to inclusion is the ability to detect and change the defaults. So what do I mean by defaults? It's like something in this picture. There's only one path to the forest. And there are other potential paths that have been blurred. So in real life, we have a lot of default practices like that have been established for a long time. We have taken them for granted, and we think they're the solution versus one of the many potential solutions. So some of the solutions or defaults are helpful. For example, standard operating procedures, which really helps us to streamline repetitive tasks. But there are some defaults that are not very helpful because they systematically or repeatedly disadvantage and inconvenience some people. I'll give you some examples. For example, in a consulting firm, their regular staff meeting is at 8 a.m. in the morning. It works perfectly okay for some people, but it systematically become a challenge for people who have elder care or child care responsibilities. They just need more time to get out the door in the morning. In a manufacturing firm, a long-standing tradition is to have these executive town hall meetings where executives give their updates, information about the organization, and ask for input. This kind of format is very natural to the office workers because they're used to it, but they're very difficult for factory workers to participate. The timing, the location, the format, it's just unfamiliar to them, so they're less likely to participate. Another example would be something maybe all of you have experienced. which is team meetings. A lot of the meetings have the unstructured discussion format where basically whoever has an opinion, you can raise your hand and you voice your opinion. Those look neutral, but in actuality, we ended up with people with the loudest voice or have the highest seniority. They speak up the most, and their opinions are considered the most. Versus people who are quieter or people who are more junior, even if they have valuable perspectives to share, their opinions may not be given due respect or consideration. And in some organizations, they also have default social activities. For example, some organizations have hunting trips as their social bonding exercises. Some organizations have golf games, and some have activities with lots of alcohol. So these probably have established a long time ago, and they are attractive to a core group of people, but they're not very attractive to a wider range of employees in these organizations. I myself have been invited to quite a few trivia games that are quite interesting, but their default is US cultural knowledge. I was born and raised in China, so I missed out on the US cultural knowledge part. So let's just say, despite my enthusiasm, I was never the first pick for anyone. So these defaults are not very helpful. But to be the most effective, we need everyone actually in the organization to feel they're seen, they're heard, they're valued, and they're empowered to fully contribute to their workplace. Some people would say, well, it's nice that we are inclusive of everyone, that we change defaults so that everyone is included, but I don't have the time. I have deadlines to meet, projects to do, and I have people to take care of. It is true that inclusion takes time and energy, but the lack of inclusion takes more time and more energy. You may ask, why do you say so? Not being non-inclusive, you don't have to do a thing. Well, let's imagine some scenarios. Let's say you're working together in a team and some of your team members are disengaged because they don't feel they're valued, they don't feel they're wanted, even in the workplace. Well, you probably have to step in and do their share of the work. Let's imagine another scenario where you're trying to implement some changes and you didn't include input from everyone who's going to be affected by the change or you need to implement the change, and you may end up with spending more time trying to manage the resistance to the change than managing the change itself. Or another scenario, let's say you're developing new products and someone on your team noticed a potential defect in the product, although everybody else was saying, oh, it's great, it's going wonderful. And that person didn't feel free to speak up because they're not sure a different voice is welcomed and they're new, and so they didn't say anything. And then you may be stuck with a very costly fix later down in the product development process or even after the product has gone to market. So the lack of inclusion really costs us dearly, psychologically and economically. And also even physically. So in one study, researchers used fMRI machines to look at people's brain activity. And what they found is that when people experience social exclusion, the same brain region that's associated with physical pain also lights up, which means we experience social exclusion similarly to the way we experience physical pain. And over time, such social exclusion can lead to worse health outcomes, such as leading to increased chances of chronic illnesses and even premature death. On the contrary, inclusion has this buffering amplification effects. When individuals do feel included, we're more likely to be engaged in the work at hand. We give it 100% of our effort rather than 30%. And we're more likely to voice concerns, voice our true thoughts, pointing out the product defect rather than hiding it. And so our teams can benefit. And our team makes better decisions because the team is trying to hear and utilize everybody's perspectives. And for organizations too, inclusion helps them to retain their talents, keep them there, and to attract talents from other organizations that are less inclusive. And these people will help them develop products and services that address and satisfy the needs of a wider variety of customer bases. And eventually, the organization benefits in terms of sustained financial performance and strategic renewal. So inclusion is beneficial on all fronts, but why isn't everyone practicing it? So inclusion takes intentional learning rather than accidental or passive acquisition. So we need to do three things to really see and try to change, to create inclusive environments. We need to pause in our existing or habitual ways of doing things. We need to ask about people's experiences and perspectives that might be different. And then we need to pivot to find alternatives to support our new vision and practices. So let me give you some examples. So the previous organization I mentioned that started their morning meetings at 8 a.m., they actually had an easy fix. They start to rotate the meeting times to different times in the day so that nobody is repeatedly inconvenienced or challenged from attending it. And some organizations also looked at their requirements. In one accounting firm, they have a default requirement for making partner, which is years of experience, full-time experience. And they have noticed that actually that requirement prevented them from retaining some women talents. And the reason is when women have children, some of them become part-timers. And this prevented them from being considered for promotion to partner when it comes their time to be evaluated, and so they left. The partners got together and they want to know, what is it really we're looking for? And they realized this, it's not full-time work experience, it's more the value added. What values are these potential partners bringing to our organization? Some people bring value by being great business go-getters, and some people bring value by building great teams, and others bring value by leveraging technology to increase effectiveness. So they really need a collection of different talents. It's like a sports team. You want people of different sizes and skill sets to be together rather than the same kind. So they decided to remove this full-time requirement and focus on value added. And this practice has helped them to achieve about 50% women partners in their organization, and they have been doing really well financially because they're able to retain talents, both in men and women. Some organizations restudied or looked at their processes, like in team meetings. So they changed this default, whoever has an opinion can speak up kind of process. One team started to use this just very simply round-robin approach. So we'll go around the room, everybody gets a chance to contribute. Another team notices that the junior folks are actually more hesitant if they disagree with the senior folks. So now they invite the junior folks to speak first, and senior folks speak last. This way, there's no pressure, less pressure for senior folks to share their opinions. In another team, they thought about, since not everybody speaks up, why don't we put everyone on the agenda? You can have a large agenda item or a small agenda item, and everybody then gets a chance to speak. Another organization notices that when people disagree with each other on contentious topics, some of them don't speak up. And so they use anonymous polls to gather everyone's opinion. And another organization uses even more structured processes, the pros and cons discussion. So they make sure whenever they have a strategy or plan, they talk about the advantages and potential downsides. So people who have contrary views can all join in the conversation. Some organizations redefine their social activities, like this real estate agency. They used to have golf games as their go-to off-site social event. Now they have bowling games. That's much more appealing to a wider segment of their employee base, and people use the opportunities to build relationships off-site. And the manufacturing organization I talked about earlier, which used these town hall meetings to gather input from employees, and they noticed that default didn't quite work. So they started training their first-line supervisors on listening skills. And they're charged with the task of going back to their employees to conduct these listening sessions and also make changes. So after 3 months' time, the managers reported back with at least one change that they have made because of the listening sessions. And this really helped them to improve morale, engagement, and reduce defects. Some other organizations look at how people work together. For example, this one organization, they thought, well, the usual way we learn to work with different styles or another person is through trial and error. It's kind of costly, right? And time consuming. We make some mistakes and then we realize, oh, this person wants to be communicated less often or through email or through phone or some other means. So they asked the question, can we be more efficient? Can we make this more intentional? So they use something called getting to know me manual. So basically, everybody keeps a document that's shared with everybody else. And in the document, there's information related to something like how I'd like to be communicated with, how I'd like to receive feedback, what gives me energy and what drains me in the workplace, and when I'm at my best and when I'm at my worst. So by sharing information like that, they increase the efficiency of understanding other people's work styles and preferences, and teamwork strengthened. Also, it signals to people that everybody's different. Just look at the manuals. And so it's okay for me to have my quirks, because we all have them. And lastly, maybe some of you are individual contributors. You may think, oh, these practices I can't do because I can't change my teams or organizations that easily. But there's still a lot of things you can do to be more inclusive. Let's say social events. When our organization or team announces, oh, there's a social event, they blast out an email and say, here's the invitation, come. But some people don't come, right? Because they don't know, oh, am I going to have someone to talk with today? So one thing you can do is to invite that person, maybe a newcomer, to go with you together to the social event. So they know at least there's one person I can talk with today, and you never know how much you can learn from it. So these are just a few examples I have time to share today. We're only limited by our willingness to explore and our imagination to let go the unhelpful practices and create something better. So next time, when you're about to say, we've always done it that way, I would like to invite you to pause and ask you these questions instead. What are some other options here? What is our ultimate goal? And how can we add agility and flexibility into the system? By answering these questions, you may start to discover a whole new world of ideas and practices that are inclusive, innovative, and effective. So my questions for you today is, what are some default practices in your environment that no longer work for everyone? And what is one default you can help to change? Thank you.